Hello, my friends. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Erica, and today's video is another episode of a series that I am trying to do here monthly on my channel titled Makeup and Artists. I love music, and I just really wanted to bring my love for music onto my channel and just talk to you guys about musical artists and groups and whatnot that I just love. And this episode is about one of my absolute favorite bands or groups of all time, Depeche Mode. Now, I became a huge Depeche Mode fan when I think I was a sophomore in high school. I'd listened to their music prior to that, but that's when I really dove into the band headfirst. The album Violator came out, I believe, in 1990, and I just fell in love with it. And I had been listening to their music before that, but that album is what hooked me in, hook, line, and sinker. So I do have a ton of information I'll be giving you about Depeche Mode in this video. The thing is that they have a very extensive career with tons of albums, tons of songs, and sometimes their songs were released as singles and they pulled them onto albums. So I'll do my best to give you a synopsis of this band and not have it be hours long, because it could be, believe me, there's so much information. And I kind of struggled with what palette to pull into this video. Depeche Mode, I don't know if they're goth necessarily, but they're definitely electro pop synth type music. And I know that's not everybody's favorite. I think people either really love Depeche Mode or they're just really not into them at all, just because they have a very different sound. And I personally am super duper into Depeche Mode. I did see them in college, my sophomore year of college, and it's the best concert I've ever been to. So anyway, I kind of dug through my collection trying to figure out what palette I was going to pull in, and I think I found the perfect one. And this is the Gothic palette from Cosmic Beauty, used to be Cosmic Brushes, because I felt like there was a lot of depth in here. I want to do a more dark look. You know, I would say that Depeche Mode, I don't know that their music is necessarily dark, but I would say that a lot of their songs and lyrics are kind of on the moody side, you know, a little bit more deep than just your average pop song, I would say. So I think what I'll do is focus on the darker shades in this palette. I'm thinking about using this one here called Alter, Gothic, maybe Phantom, and then I think I'm going to use just this shimmer shade called Powerful. I might throw something else in shimmer-wise, but that's what I think I'm going to do. I might even throw a little bit of Supreme in this look too, but just, you know, darker, moodier purple look for this video. I thought that would match Depeche Mode quite well. And of course, I do have both of my brows done, and both eyelids are primed in the Juvia's Place Prep Prime eyeshadow primer, because I'll be doing both eyes on camera today. So I think what I'll do is start off with this shade right here called Supreme and put that in my transition area. And I didn't do a very good job of memorizing the facts about Depeche Mode because life's just been a little crazy. So I'm going to be reading a lot of this stuff off my notes here. So if that's annoying, I do apologize, but that's just where we're at today, folks. Depeche Mode is a British band, British electronic music band formed in 1980 in Basildon, Essex, UK. But they got their origins actually back in 1977. The original Depeche Mode members are Dave Gahan, who is my fave, Martin Gore, Andy Fletcher, and Vince Clarke. That's who initially was the main group of Depeche Mode, I think, for the longest, well, maybe not the longest, but that's who was initially in the band. But in 1977, the first two members that joined the band was Vince Clarke and Andy Fletcher. And they met in high school and formed the band No Romance in China with Clarke as vocals, I believe. Is that right? Yeah, Clarke on vocals and Fletcher on guitar and bass. And then in 1980, Martin Gore joined the band and they changed their name to Composition of Sound, which I didn't know that either. I learned a lot about Depeche Mode reading I read some stuff on Wikipedia, of course, and then also I read a couple little articles about Depeche Mode too, but the majority of this stuff is coming off of Wikipedia. And, you know, I know sometimes Wikipedia doesn't always give you the facts, but I felt like, I knew some stuff about Depeche Mode already, so I felt like most of it was I think it's pretty accurate. Later that same year, 1980, Dave Gahan joined the band. And how they found him was they had gone to like this local jam session and heard him sing the song Heroes by David Bowie. And they were like, oh, this guy's awesome. Like, he's got some pipes. And yeah, they all just joined forces. And Dave Gahan, you know, he's the lead singer. He kind of became like the front man for Depeche Mode at that point. Now, at this point, when they joined in 1980, was when they really got into the electro pop synth sound. You know, synthesizers were pretty affordable, and they just really liked that sound and liked experimenting with synthesizers. And so that kind of obviously became like their main attraction, or like what kind of set them apart, I would say, from other bands at that time. You know, I mean, yes, obviously there were people that were using synthesizers and electro pop type music, but they really just got all in to that sound. And so that just obviously became like their trademark sound, was more of the electro pop synthesizer type sound. Now, their first live concert was in June of 1980 at Nicholas School in Basildon, England. And their main influences were like Susie and the Banshees, Talking Heads, which I'm not a huge fan of, Iggy Pop, David Bowie, and they also really loved like James Brown, Elvis, and Prince. And I will say that listening to, you know, several of their albums over the years, you can definitely hear all of those influences in their music. There's a lot of their songs, the way Dave sings, they're very soulful and almost like, I wouldn't say R&B, but you can definitely hear like an R&B soulful influence in several of their songs. There's a song called Condemnation that is very like, you know, like you almost sound like you're in a church, you know, this gospel choir that is just like bringing you down to your knees. You know, I love that. I love the varying sounds that they have had, or varying styles that they have had in different songs throughout the years. That's something that I really enjoy about Depeche Mode. But as time went on, they started to become a little embarrassed of their band name, which was Composition of Sound. So I believe it was Dave Gahan, is that right? Was looking through a magazine and found the name Depeche Mode. It was taken from a French magazine, and he just really liked the meaning of it. But I think honestly he had the meaning of it wrong at first. He thought it meant like fast fashion or something, and it actually means fashion news. So that was kind of a funny little tidbit that I found out. So I really like this. It looks kind of patchy right now, but I'm going to continue to mess with it. Could just be the primer not jiving well, I don't know. But now what I think I'll do is go into Alter and deepen up the crease with that and put that in my outer V as well. They did go on their first, like, I think small concert tour towards the end of 1980. And they also started recording like their debut music, which was in 1980 for the Some Bizarre album. And the song was called Photographic. But that was re-recorded for their actual debut album, which was Speak and Spell. And I did get that album later. Like I mentioned, I really didn't get into like loving them until I was a sophomore in high school. And I'll talk about that album that came out that I lost my mind over. But then I went back and really started to like research their music, or like, I don't know, just look for their music. And so I got a lot of their older albums at that point, and then just did like a deep dive into Depeche Mode. So I did have the album Speak and Spell. I think I had the majority of their albums actually in high school and into college. A producer from Mute Records released their first single, which was called Dreaming of Me. And that was in 1981, followed by their next single, which was called New Life. And I'm not sure that I am aware of those songs. I was trying to think of, I meant to go and like listen to those songs and see if I'd ever heard them before. But I don't know that I have, honestly. Those two titles do not ring a bell for me at all, for whatever reason. But their next single that was released, called Just Can't Get Enough, now that was huge. That was released and it instantly went to the top 10 in the UK. And I want to say that that might have been the first song that I heard from Depeche Mode, was Just Can't Get Enough. I still love that song. It's so good. So good. And I'm pretty sure that was the first song I heard from them. And I was like, huh, this is very different. Like, you know, the synth sound, electro pop sound. You know, I'd heard that a little bit from maybe a couple other artists, but not nearly as like involved, I would say, as the Depeche Mode Just Can't Get Enough song. And honestly, that song kind of, I mean, even though it did pretty well, there was, you know, some mixed reviews about Depeche Mode initially because people kind of felt like they weren't really true musicians because they weren't playing like live instruments in their songs. Like I said, that was more the synthesizer type stuff. So they kind of had to prove themselves in a way when it came to music because they just were different musicians and had it, like I said, a different sound. So I think it took them a little bit of time to get some traction in the music world at that point. Now, around this time, like the early 80s, 1981-ish, maybe into 82-ish, Vince Clarke decided to leave the band. Now, there's a couple different stories as to why he left the band. His story was that he didn't really enjoy the electro pop synth sound as much as the rest of them did, but some of the other band members said that he really was not into the strenuous recording, touring. You know, they were starting to, you know, obviously do more of that at that point. And so I don't know really why he left the band. It could be a combination of the two. I don't know. And then to take his place in late 1981, 82, Alan Wilder joined the group. And I really like him too. Really liked his contribution to the band. So then like the main core, of course, of Depeche Mode became Gone, Gore, Fletcher, and Wilder. And actually Wilder was like a classically trained pianist, keyboardist. So he really brought a completely different element, I would say, into the band, you know, because he really knew what he was doing with the keyboards and the piano and that sort of thing. So he really brought that aspect of music into the band. I like that, but I'm getting it real edgy. So I'm gonna go back around with this brush, nothing additional on it, and blend that out. In 1983, they released another album called Construction Time Again, which I love that album. I have it, so good. Now that album, Construction Time Again, released one of their most successful singles, which was titled Everything Counts, which that's another one of my favorite songs of theirs. They were gaining this, you know, pretty big fan base, but really only in like the UK and Australia. At this point, they still hadn't really broken into like the US music scene. So now I think what I'll do is go into this shade right here called Gothic and put that primarily in the outer V and into my crease as well. But then in 1984, they released the album Some Great Reward, and the song People Are People was released, and that's when things just blew up for them. I mean, that's when they were known worldwide, basically. Like that just, I don't know, for whatever reason, that song, well, I know for whatever reason it's a great song, but that really just, that was their like first real smash song that got like worldwide attention and success. I mean, people were just like, and that's really when they kind of broke into the US music scene, was with that song and that album. And I watched actually a little documentary, not a very long documentary. I'll find it and link it in my description box. Mostly just interviewing Dave Gahan about his reaction to their fame at that point, because they were going on like concert tours in the UK, in Europe, and then came to America. I think that was the first time they came to America for a concert tour. And he was just blown away that there were so many fans in the United States at their concerts. I mean, he said they were just coming in droves to their concerts, and they were like, what? You know, because they hadn't experienced that quite yet, of course, you know, that much popularity and success. But that's, you know, that was really what pushed them into like the music stratosphere at that point. Now this album, Some Great Reward, also had Master and Servant, great song, Lie to Me, Blasphemous Rumors, and Somebody. Now all of those songs have become some of my favorite Depeche Mode songs ever. But at that point, like in 1984, I was in fourth grade, I wasn't listening to them at all. Like I probably heard them on the radio maybe, but I don't have any recollection of like really knowing who Depeche Mode was at that point. In 1985, they released the album Black Celebration, which is one of my favorite albums, of course. I mean, I could say that about all their albums, really. And they also released like a singles album called The Singles, 81 to 85. And I believe, I don't know if it was both of those albums or just the singles album, had Shake the Disease. It's called A Heart and Fly on a Windscreen. And, you know, those songs, those albums really started to, I wouldn't, maybe not develop the alternative music scene, but became a huge staple, I would say, of the alternative music scene, you know? And also, I'm going to go back into Alter just a teeny tiny bit, but you know, it was kind of seen as goth, I guess I would say. I don't know. I mean, I read some stuff about Depeche Mode that they were really considered a goth band, and then other people are like, no, they really weren't. So I don't know. Maybe more like what we call emo now, I guess is what you would say. But it was just this completely different vibe. And, you know, that was when like the hair bands were huge, you know, like in the 80s, that was, you know, the hair bands like Motley Crue and Poison and Def Leppard and stuff. And so this was just a totally different spin on music. And so the people that were kind of like not really into the hair bands really just dove into the Depeche Mode sound and vibe and look and all of that, you know. So it was really a cool addition to the music scene for people who just, you know, they loved music, but they just really were not into the hairband stuff, you know. Okay, I kind of screwed this side up a little bit. So I'm gonna go back in with this brush into Supreme, the shade here, and kind of fix that hopefully, because it's gotten a little blown out. Now, Black Celebration also had the song Stripped and A Question of Time. And I want to say, didn't it have A Question of Lust on it too? I didn't see that, but I'm pretty sure it did. And oh, Stripped is one of my favorite songs from Depeche Mode. I love the Black Celebration album. I still have that somewhere in this house. Oh, I love it. And then in 1987, the album Music for the Masses was released. Oh, so good. And that's when they really started to experiment even more with the synthesizer. You know, that was a pretty synth-heavy album, I would say, with their songs, and like slowing it down, speeding it up. You know, the songs that they were doing, like some of them are real slow and moody and sexy, and then others were more like sped up and poppy and like you could dance to, stuff like that. But just so cool. And that album, Music for the Masses, had Strangelove, Never Let Me Down Again, and Behind the Wheel. And I want to say it had Little 15 on it too, and that's one of my favorite songs from Depeche Mode is Little 15. I love Behind the Wheel. Strangelove, oh man, I've listened to that song so many times. It's unbelievable how many times I listen to that song. I'm not kidding. Holy cow. My mom used to be like, could you listen to something else besides Depeche Mode? I wasn't listening to it when it was released in 1987, no, but I was listening to it like in the mid 90s, I would say, like 1990 to 1992 is when I really got into listening to all of the Depeche Mode songs. And holy cow, I've blown this up way too much. So I think what I'll do is go into just a nothing on it brush and just kind of take the edge of this down a little bit because it's getting a little crazy. I might actually, you know what I'll do? I'll go into my e.l.f. contour palette. Why not? Take the edge of this off, go into this shade right here. Now, the album Music for the Masses was described as the most accomplished and sexy Depeche Mode album to date. And they went on a world tour that actually ended at the Pasadena Rose Bowl. And it was one of the highest crowds, or the biggest crowds in the history of the Rose Bowl. That is so awesome. I just think that's cool. I don't remember that at all, but pretty cool, you know, that I don't really, honestly, I mean, based on what I read and what I saw, I don't really think that they had any clue that their music and their sound and their style, all of that, was going to become so huge and so successful all over the world. You know, I think from what I remember hearing them talking about in the interviews I watched, is that, you know, they thought, I think they thought they would be pretty popular like where they were from in the UK, but to have the worldwide success, because I mean, they were successful all over here, Asia, all throughout Europe, I mean, all over the place. And so to have that kind of success was, I think, pretty mind-blowing to them. You know, I don't know that they really anticipated that. Now in 1990 was when the album Violator was released. And that is when I just fell into the Depeche Mode abyss. Okay. Now I can remember very vividly being in the car. I think I was with my mom, and we had the radio on, and the song Enjoy the Silence came on the radio, and that's on the Violator album. And I just lost my mind. I'm like, oh my gosh, is this Depeche Mode? Yes, I think it is. This song is amazing. It's amazing. And I just remember like riding my bike to Sam Goody, because that was what you did back in the 90s when you wanted a tape or an album. You rode your bike to the local record store, which is Sam Goody, and I purchased the Violator album. And was it on CD? No, I think I just bought the tape at that point. Or did I buy it on, I might have bought it on vinyl. I don't know. How can I not remember that? I don't know. But I remember coming home and listening to that whole album repeatedly, just listening to it over and over and over and over again. And I just was obsessed. The songs that are on that album, if you have not listened to it, of course, I'm going to link tons of their songs in the description box. But if you haven't listened to Violator, I highly recommend checking it out, because I would say that every single one of the songs that's on that album is just incredible. There's World in My Eyes, Enjoy the Silence, Personal Jesus, which I think is probably one of their most recognized or well-known songs, would be Personal Jesus. Did I say Policy of Truth yet? That's one of my, such a good song. And I can remember that song is basically about somebody that's cheating and is like honest with their partner about the fact that they cheated, and like, oh, it's so wonderful that I was honest with you. And it's like, yeah, well, now I'm leaving your ass. And I remember going through a situation with a boyfriend in high school where he had cheated on me, and that song just became my freaking anthem, you know? So great. I've mixed these two shades together, this Altar and Supreme, and I'm just gonna kind of go back around and just, I don't know, blend this a little bit more. I'm liking how it's looking. It got a little crazy there for a minute, but I was able to tone her down a little bit. Thank goodness. I start talking and then I'm not really paying attention what the hell I'm doing with my blending, and it's like, okay, slow down there, Sally, slow down. It also has Halo, which is another great song, Clean, Blue Dress. That might be all the songs that are on that album. But yeah, I mean, I just was like, and, you know, another part of my high school years during this time was that, and I've talked about this in another video, is that my best friends were killed in a car accident when I was a sophomore in high school. And I don't know why necessarily, but the song Enjoy the Silence was a song that really helped me grieve and heal from their passing. You know, it really did. I don't know why, because that song's really not about grief or loss or anything. It's like a love song. But I don't know, that song really just helped me get into like a healing mindset. So quite often I would just sit in my room with the lights off and just lay there and listen to Enjoy the Silence on repeat and just cry and grieve, and I don't know, and then it had like this healing property to it also. And it's a song that I still really love to listen to, because it just got me through that really hard time of my life. And it doesn't have bad memories associated with it. It has really good healing memories associated with it. So that was a huge part of my, yeah, like I said, my healing process when my friends passed away. I think I'm done with the mattes. This is as good as it's going to get. And I feel like it's pretty smoky and blown out and maybe a little crazy looking. So now I'm going to go into Powerful and just put that across my whole, well, the whole open spot of my mobile lid right there. Now, Enjoy the Silence, Policy of Truth, and World in My Eyes all fell in the top 10 of the US Billboard Top 200, and they were selling out arenas all across the United States with that tour of that album. Now, in 1991, the album Songs of Faith and Devotion came out. And that, again, was another album of Depeche Mode's. I'm going to get a different brush. I'll use this one. That was just mind-blowingly amazing. And I think it was in 1990, was it 3? I think I thought it was 1994, but I think it was 1993 that I went with my college roommates, well, one of my college roommates, and then her ex-boyfriend, which was a little uncomfortable. I mean, at that point, they were trying to be friendly with each other, but still, there was some feelings going on there that was a little awkward to be around. But we went to the Rose Garden in Portland, Oregon, to see their concert. And, you know, that album had been out for, what, a couple years at that point, I guess. But it was obviously still really popular. And I am telling you, that concert revolutionized my world. It really did. It was so good. They sounded so good live. And they had like the coolest set. Like they had these huge like TV screens up behind them. And all this cool imagery, and I don't know, they just sounded so good live. I was so impressed with that concert. I mean, and the place was just packed full. I'm sure it was sold out. You know, we got tickets way in advance, and everybody was just singing and screaming their lyrics together. I mean, it was one of the most, like, you know, when you go to a concert and everybody's singing the lyrics together, you feel like this sense of like oneness, like everybody's together, you know, and you're just all into it and you're loving the music. But at that particular concert, that's really where I felt it the most. I've been to several concerts, and that was the one that I really felt like we were all, it gives me the chills just to think about it. Like we were all together loving this music and singing the lyrics together. And it was just so awesome. It really was. It was one of the coolest musical experiences of my entire life. So awesome. Now, this album had I Feel You, Condemnation, Walking in My Shoes. Oh gosh, I should, you know what? Hold on just a minute. Let me look up the other songs that are on that album, because they were all so freaking good. And I just wrote a few down that I remembered, but I want to give you more of the song titles because they were so good. Mercy in You. Oh, that's such a good song too. In Your Room. Oh, In Your Room. If you've never heard In Your Room, I mean, like I said, I'm going to link tons of songs in my description box. I'm going to go back in with my finger and just kind of add a little bit more in here. This is such a pretty, beautiful purple metallic shade. I love it. But In Your Room is so good. Oh, it's a very sexy song, very sexy. And I also read that like they had been really into listening to like Nirvana, Janet Jackson, who else? I wrote them down. Nirvana, Janet Jackson, Alice in Chains, like, so they were listening to like, you know, more of the, I guess, the grunge scene, but also like, well, Janet Jackson was not part of the grunge scene, but like the R&B magic that Janet Jackson has always been hugely part of putting out. So I could hear that in that album. Like I mentioned, that song Condemnation, that was pretty like break you down to your knees. And also just like the grungy sound too. You could hear that in their music as well, especially like with I Feel You, for sure. But yeah, that was another album that I just loved to listen to. I still listen to Depeche Mode songs all the time. I do. I love to listen to their music. I think what I might do as well, just to make it a little, you know, just to put a little bit, I mean, although I really like the depth, but I think what I might do is put a little bit of Nocturnal over the top of that here with my finger, just going with like this finger here, just kind of add a little bit of this in. I don't know if it's going to work, but see how it's got that kind of cool shift to it. It may not work over the top of that purple, that darker purple shimmer, but we'll see. Now, I will say that no, I can see it a little bit. Okay, that's cool. I will say that they did, especially, it sounded like Dave Gahan was pretty drug addicted, you know, like he defines it as smack blasted. And, you know, they were doing lots of drugs, lots of drinking, and it did become a pretty big problem for, I don't know if it was for all of them, but I know Dave Gahan. I mean, the things I found were primarily Dave Gahan talking about the band, the lead singer. And he was a mess. Absolute freaking mess for quite some time. I do believe now that he is clean and sober, but it ravaged his life for a while, his drug and alcohol addiction. And also Andy Fletcher was very open and honest about the fact that he was suffering from pretty severe depression. And in 1995, Alan Wilder decided to just bail from the group. It just, the addiction, the depression, all of those things that were just kind of like, covering the band. He just couldn't take it anymore. So he did leave the band. And, I can totally understand that. I mean, I think it was just the fame and the constant touring. I mean, they went on some of the largest concert tours ever in the history of music. And like I mentioned, I don't know that I don't think they anticipated it was going to get to that level. And so, I think they had some pretty unhealthy coping strategies from being gone from their homes all the time, and also this sudden fame and attention and all this stuff that's going on. I think that it just really took a toll. And that happens to a lot of bands, a lot of groups that I've read about. It's just kind of part of that whole scene, the alcohol and drug stuff. It just kind of takes over in a lot of ways, and it's really unfortunate. But it sounds to me, from what I read, that they've all kind of gotten it together. Now, in 1997, the album Ultra was released, and for whatever reason, I cannot think of any songs that are on that. I don't know that I ever listened to that album. Not that I'm still a huge fan of Depeche Mode, but I'm more of a fan of their older music, I would say. And it actually did pretty well, despite the fact that they were in pretty serious turmoil with their drug addiction. And even after Alan Wilder left, that was still going on for quite some time. The songs Barrel of a Gun and It's No Good did pretty well off that album, but there was no tour. There was no tour in support of that album because they just were, I think, too much of a mess to really like get organized and go on a tour for that particular album. And then there have been several more albums released, several more tours have happened with Depeche Mode. Like I mentioned, it sounds like they have gotten their act together. And, they still are one of the most successful bands of music in the music world of all time. And I personally just adore them. I mean, I know I've gone on and on and on and on about it, but I just really am so happy that I discovered Depeche Mode, fell in love with the band, and have just have so many fond, wonderful memories of their music. Just awesome. And I would love to know like what your favorite songs are, what your favorite albums are. I didn't cover everything in this video because it would be hours long. So anything that I missed that you'd like to bring up in the comment section, please do. I would love to share more information and more knowledge about Depeche Mode. Now, the remaining two members of Depeche Mode, I believe, is Dave Gahan and Martin Gore. Unfortunately, Andy Fletcher passed away in May of 2022 after having heart surgery. And that really devastated all three of, I'm sure Vince Clarke too, but the other members of the band were devastated by his loss. Alan Wilder has never come back to the band. I don't know, he just decided that was it. I don't know a whole lot about their more recent stuff. I just don't, because I'm so attracted to and so in love with and such a huge fan of the older Depeche Mode music. So I'm pretty much done with this look. I really like how it turned out. I might futz a little bit around the outer edge with that the gothic shade, but I'm gonna go finish that up, clean this up, do the rest of my makeup. I'll come back. So this, of course, is my finished look for Depeche Mode. I think, like, if I went to a Depeche Mode concert, I'd feel pretty damn good right now. Let me show you just a few things I threw on my face for my finished look. I'll show you the palette again, and then finish up by, once again, expressing my deep love, devotion, and obsession with Depeche Mode. On my lips, I did use a Ladybug Glow Multichrome Lip Gloss in the shade number 5. And, usually when I put this lip gloss on, the purple shows up more, but for whatever reason, the teal is showing up more, but I really like how it looks with the purple eye look. I think the two look really cool together, and I just love these lip glosses, and it was really fun to pull one out and use one again today. For my upper lid liner, I use the Revolution Beauty, what is this? The Iconic Flick Ink Felt Liner in black. Love this. For my mascara, I use the Gifted by Tarte. Love this mascara too. So now, of course, let's talk about the eyeshadow palette, Gothic from Cosmic Beauty. Oh, love it. I did kind of feel though, like this shade right here, Supreme, was a little patchy today. And I have used this twice before. I think maybe I've only used this shade one time before though, and didn't feel like it was patchy. It could have just been maybe the Juvia's Place eye primer and this particular shade didn't jive together very well. I do feel like I got a deep purple look from this palette. Absolutely. This shade worked really well. This shade too. And then it was really fun to put Powerful down and then put this Nocturnal over the top of it. That looked really cool. I think what might have even looked even cooler is if I had put Obscure over the top of this. I did pop this in my inner corners, and then on my lower lash lines, I used a combination of these three shades. And I just love how the look turned out. It did get a little crazy there for a little while because I was not really paying attention to what I was doing. And I was just talking about Depeche Mode, and I just finally was like, whoa, what? Slow down. So I was glad that I grabbed my e.l.f. contour palette, my little cheat palette, and kind of toned it down a little bit. But this is such a beautiful purple palette. And I don't know, I just felt like this was perfect to bring into a video talking about Depeche Mode. And I really do want you guys, if you're a fan of Depeche Mode, to share your memories of the band, like if you've seen them in concert, what your favorite albums are, your favorite songs are. I am just such a huge fan. I always will be. I listen to Depeche Mode music often. And I know I've said this twice now. I'm going to say it a third time. I will link a ton of their songs in the description box. So if you're not familiar with Depeche Mode and you'd like to get familiar, or if you just maybe haven't listened to their music for a while and you want to go take a trip down memory lane with me, I would love for you to go and listen to their music. And I mean it. It was the best concert. Seeing Depeche Mode live was the best concert I've ever been to and one of my most memorable experiences of my years in college. It's just was so fun. God, it was amazing. And just like that oneness I was telling you about with the crowd, everything. It was just so awesome. And yeah, really enjoyed giving you guys these facts about Depeche Mode. Will always be one of my favorite groups ever in the history of all the world. Thank you guys so much for taking time out of your lives to sit down and watch this video. If you're new here and you enjoyed what you saw, please consider subscribing, smash the like button, and of course, comment down below in the comment section. I love to chat with you guys there. If you've been here before, thank you so much for coming back. I cannot wait to see you guys again in my next video. But in the meantime, please take very good care of yourself. Be well, safe, happy, and I will see you soon. Bye.
Drop it.